Hello, how is everyone? I hope you're all well. I hope it's not too hot. Okay, let's have a look at our lesson for today. Okay, so the literature lesson today is going to be about experimental literature. Do you notice anything strange about the first slide? Yeah, no capitals. And often in experimental literature, the authors try out something different to experiment, for example, with no capital letters. Let's have a look. Today is going to be about experimenting. So I feel strongly that literature should be creative and fun. And if we're teaching literature or learning literature, we need to be able to be creative and have some fun as well. We're going to look at some of the different ways that some authors have experimented and the effects of these. We're going to look at them. Some of them are very difficult to understand, but we'll have a look. And we're going to try out some experiments with literature and with writing. Okay, I'm going to finish by giving you an example of the type of book presentation I want you to do as part of the coursework in a few weeks' time, in June. So we'll look at that at the end. Okay. Okay, so this is the first experiment, and I'm not going to tell you what the experiment is. I want you to read through these two extracts and see if you know what is special about this book. This is a novel called Gadsby. The author was Ernest Vincent Wright, and he did something very strange and experimental. Have a look now. You can pause the screen. Okay, look at this one. Pause now. Okay, are you ready for the next one? Okay, and the second extract here. Pause and have a look now. Okay, did you notice anything? You can pause now and tell your partner. Is there anything strange about these two extracts from this novel? Any ideas? Okay, now the amazing thing is about this whole book is that the author wrote the book with not even one example of the letter E. Have a look. Can you see any words with the letter E in them? Nothing. Isn't that amazing? The letter E is the most common letter in the English language. And both of these screens, that the whole novel has no letter E in it. Amazing. So this is like an academic exercise to try to do this for people to think how amazing he is. So it doesn't mean it's the best novel in the world, but it's an interesting experiment. Okay, I'm going to ask you to do the same experiment now. So a whole novel written without using a particular letter is called a lipogram. Can you try now? I'm going to give you 5 minutes, pause the screen. Can you write a paragraph without using the letter E? That means no definite article, no the. Okay, so you can't write the word English either. You can't use so many words that have the letter E in them. Pause the screen now and see how much you can write with no letter E. Okay, good luck. Okay, how much did you manage to write? It's really difficult, isn't it? Really difficult. Well done if you managed more than 2 sentences. Try to write a novel without the letter E. Okay, that's the first experiment. The second experimental literature is where people use strange use of punctuation. For example, people have written a whole novel in only one sentence, a very, 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 very long sentence. People have written novels with no capital letters at all. Or people have written this, what is called a stream of consciousness novel, which is just developing thoughts as it goes on, as we think. How long is the longest sentence that you can write? Could you write a sentence which is a whole page, a whole paragraph? It has to be grammatically correct. Okay, can you write now? I want you to pause the screen, write about the rainy season in Guinea-Bissau, but don't end the sentence, continue. Okay, pause now and see how much you can write. Okay, how long was your sentence? How many words, how many lines? It's difficult, isn't it? Because we need to end the sentences, to end our thoughts and work on to the next one. Okay, here is Stream of Consciousness. I don't know if you've ever read a book which is written in the style of Stream of Consciousness. It's a literary device, and this is the definition. It's organized around the interior flow of thoughts of the narrator. So the person who is writing is just writing what they're thinking. Just as our thoughts flow unconnected and sometimes disorganized, stream of consciousness writing is often disjointed and often lacks traditional sentence structure and punctuation. So I want you to try. So pause the video again. Can you write all your thoughts, everything you're thinking about? It doesn't matter if they're linked. Try it for 5 minutes, just writing, 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 everything you're thinking. Okay, now. Okay, what does that look like? Is it really crazy with lots of different ideas, just like what happens in our brains? There is, here are some examples of stream of consciousness. So A and B, I'll read them out for you. Look at that polar bear on the television. Did I take out the trash? Wait, I think I threw away a check from Mum. I need a drink of Kool-Aid now. So it's typical thinking. So someone is watching television, thinking about taking the trash out, thinking about what they threw away and what they need now. So everything is linked together. B is a different sorts of thoughts. B, the bathroom needs to be cleaned. Where did I put my shoes? I think I should wear shoes while cleaning. I don't like to get anything on my feet, which are in bad need of a pedicure. Maybe red polish next time, or a pinkish orange for the spring. I can't wait for warmer weather. So it's linking on from thinking about cleaning the bathroom, shoes, linking shoes to the cleaning, looking at your feet from the shoes, the toes and the toenails, nail polish, the color, and thinking about springtime and the weather. So this is very interesting, stream of consciousness. There is a very famous novel by James Joyce, an Irish writer. It's called Ulysses, and it is mad crazy. I've never read the whole book, but lots of people, of course, have. It's a whole book with stream of consciousness, and many people don't even understand it. So have a look. I want you to pause the screen. There are 2 screens, 2 slides of this. Have a look through, see how much you can understand. So first, pause the screen and read this slide. Okay, and now the next one. Okay, how much did you understand? Now, I don't understand much of it, but I know it's somebody thinking about many different things at once. So lots of different things related to food and seafood, and lots of different things related here to food again, and the people, and all of these thoughts going through their mind. Okay, let's move on to another one. The third type of experiment is telling the same story many, many times. So this book, it's called Exercises in Style, written in French by Queneau. It sells the same story 99 times. It's been part translated and part adapted into over 30 languages, and it contains 99 versions of the same very basic story. This is the story. On a crowded bus at midday, the narrator observes one man accusing another of jostling him deliberately. When a seat is vacated, the first man takes it. Later, in another part of town, the man is spotted again while being advised by a friend to have another button sewn onto his overcoat. It's not even particularly interesting. But this book, Exercises in Style, retells this apparently unremarkable tale 99 times, using a variety of styles ranging from sonnet to cockney to mathematical formula. And I've got an example of one of the last chapters here. In one of the last chapters, he uses only these interjections. So the whole chapter telling the story is this in red on the screen. Psst. Ah, oh, ah, ha, hey, well, oh, pooh, puff, ow, ooh, ouch, hey, eh, pfft, well, hey, pooh, oh, right. Very, very weird experimental type of literature, that. Okay, I want you to practice now writing a story in different ways. This is very good creative use of literature. You could do this in classes maybe, or practice yourself if you're going to be writing. This is the story in black. I want you to choose. This is up to you. If you want to write it in one way, okay, or two, or in 3 different ways, or each person can choose A, B, or C. Can you write that story as an argument between 2 people? Maybe it could be the girl's mother and the girl, or it could be the man, the rich man who came in the shop, and the girl. Up to you who is arguing. Write the same story as a poem, B, or write the same story as a stream of consciousness of one of the characters. So I'd like you to pause the screen now and write one of those. Good luck. Okay, did you write it? It's very nice to experiment with different styles, isn't it? And different types of literature. And retelling a story is a good way of doing this. Okay, I think we've mentioned modern fairy tales before when we were looking at children's books. So lots of people have taken these traditional fairy stories, children's stories, and rewritten them to fit in with the 21st century. This is optional. If you would like to do this now, you can pause the screen or do it later. Think of a story, then rewrite it, changing the details to bring it into the 21st century. For example, would Sleeping Beauty eat an apple? Maybe she would eat a McDonald's instead to bring it into the 21st century. Maybe the prince wouldn't save the woman, maybe the woman would save the prince. Maybe that's more 21st century. Okay, if you want to do that, pause now. If not, we're moving on to the next idea. Okay, the next strange experiment is random order of chapters. Now this book here, The Unfortunates by B.S. Johnson, is sold in a box. It's not a bound book like most books. Does the order of the pages and the order of chapters in a book matter? This book comprised of 27 unbound sections. The sections are unbound so they can be mixed together according to the book's experimental structure. So you have the first and the last sections, which are marked. The other 25 sections are intended to be read in random order. So you can choose, it doesn't matter which order you read the book in. If readers prefer not to accept the random order in which they receive the novel, they may rearrange the sections into any random order before reading. Interesting, isn't it? I've never read that book either, but it's an interesting experiment. And the fifth type of experiment is the same story with different endings. This is a book called Happy Endings, and it's by a famous English author called Margaret Atwood. And she has several different endings of the same story. It's a very, very normal story, but she tells different versions of it. So the story starts like this. John and Mary meet. What happens next? If you want a happy ending, try A. So A here is the story with the happy ending. I want you to pause now and read the simple story. Okay, not particularly interesting. It's very normal, isn't it? Happy ending. But then there are different endings that you can try for the same story. This is F. And I'd like you to read this end of the story, a different one. Pause the screen now. Okay. Which version of the story do you like best? The happy ending or where John and Mary die? So beginnings are always more fun because we know what will happen in the end. It's all experimenting with different ideas in literature. So this is what we've looked at. We've looked at 5 different experiments, experimental forms of literature, and hopefully you have tried them out as well. The first one was a lipogram. We had the whole novel written without using the letter E, very difficult. The second one was experimental uses of punctuation. One long sentence, no capitals, stream of consciousness. The third one is telling the same story again and again in different ways. The fourth one is random order of chapters. And the fifth one is same story with different endings. Which one do you like best? Which one do you think is more interesting? Which one would you like to write if you were an author and you wanted to experiment with literature? Okay, so to finish the class today, I'm going to do a presentation to you. Now, remember, I've asked you to prepare a presentation on a book. Some of you have told me which books you'd like to present on in the group. Some of you haven't decided yet, so I want you to decide for homework and start preparing it. This presentation will be in June, okay, as part of the coursework. So I'm going to do an example for you now. And this is the book I'm going to present to you. Okay, it's a book called Life After Life. And I just remind you before I start, this is what we need to do. Your presentation must be only 2 or 3 minutes long. And after the presentation, there will be a few questions. So after this, I'd like you to write some questions in the WhatsApp group and I can answer them later. You're going to need to record all the presentations in class and send them to me afterwards, to Mark. And what you need to include in your 2 or 3 minutes is a brief summary, introduction, some basic facts about the genre, the setting, the conflicts, the climax, for example, some of the features of literature in the book, for example, similes, metaphors, symbols, allegory, a few quotations that you like or that you don't like, interesting quotations, and end with why you would recommend it. Okay, so I will give you some examples of these in a minute. On the PowerPoint, I have examples of these all written out, so you can see them on the PowerPoint later. So this is the book I'm going to talk about. I'm going to stop sharing now, and I have got my stopwatch here for myself. So I'm going to talk in a minute and time myself. Okay. Oh, I can't see. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to talk about this book now. You ready? 3 minutes. Okay, the book is called Life After Life, and it's by Kate Atkinson. It's a historical novel, and it's a very experimental novel because it talks about her lives, lots of different lives. She keeps going back to the beginning and being born again in the same circumstance, in the same life. Each life of hers lasts a little bit longer. So it's very interesting to see the repetition and to see how things link together in her life. There are many similes and metaphors in this book. There's a lot of conflict. The main conflict is probably between the character, the main character herself, who's called Ursula, and Hitler. So it's actually a historical drama about a girl who manages to kill Hitler after being alive many, many different times. Very amazing type of novel. Each life she has, she starts learning a little bit more about how she wants to live and what she wants to do with her life. So many people need several different lives before they actually have a perfect life. The similes and metaphors and allegories that are in the book, death is a very common mention, allegory or simile, because she keeps dying and coming back to life again. It's not too sad, the book, it's just reflects normal life. There is an allegory or a comparison with a strange type of creature, which is a snake, which goes around in a circle with its tail in its mouth. And this is called an Ouroboros, which is symbolic because it's about the circle of life going round and round and round. Okay, I would really highly recommend the book because you get to know her much better as the book goes on, and you get to know how people can control the direction their life goes in. She's a wonderful girl. It reflects a lot of the history of the time, and she is the protagonist, and the antagonist is, of course, Hitler, who is trying to destroy the world. I would highly recommend you to read this book. Do you have any questions? Okay, so that is my presentation. Very informal. I just showed you some of the features of the book. I actually wanted to look at the screen while I was doing this, but I couldn't because I'm recording this lesson. So I have all these notes here, which I didn't look at. Of course, you can look at your notes while you're doing it. So let me show you the notes now. Okay, this is what you need to do for your presentation. Here are some notes about the genre, the setting, the narrator, the tone, protagonist, conflict, climax, imagery, paradox, and parallelism. You can have another look at this later if you want to help you with yours. You don't need to include all of these, but some of these type of ideas. Here is some information about similes and metaphors in my book. I mentioned death and darkness. Another one here is Mephistopheles and Faust. These are big metaphorical figures in literature, Ursula and her aunt. Symbols and allegory. We have death and snow and the Ouroboros, this ancient symbol of infinity, this image of a snake eating its tail, which comes up a few times in the book. Here are the quotations, which I couldn't remember because they were written down here. Darkness fell swiftly, at first an enemy, but then a friend. So this is talking about her death, which comes very, very often, and she knows she has to die to come back again to do more. So the darkness, death, was an enemy at first, and then it was a friend. There must be something written on her skin, in her face, that some people could read and others couldn't. Interesting about her type of character and the type of people she came across. Okay, so your homework is to decide on the book you're going to present. Tell me in the literature group which book you're planning on doing. Of course, you can have more than one person doing the same book because you will present it in different ways. You need to check with me first that the book is acceptable. Some of the books people have been suggesting have been too short or too simple. And I would like you to start preparing your presentation. Okay. Next week, on the end, is it the 31st of May? I am on holiday from work, so I will do this literature class in person. Okay, so we will talk about the presentations a little bit more, and you can ask me any questions next Tuesday. And I think we're going to do a little bit of acting. Okay. Hope you enjoyed this lesson, very experimental, and have a good week. Bye.